Welcome to the Truth in the Turn podcast. I'm your host, Zach Arnold, alongside Austin Leak, and our podcast dives into the truth of NASCAR to break some of the narratives within the sport. Today, we are talking to Noah Lewis, a passionate journalist who has paved his way into the NASCAR media scene.
And make sure you guys give us a follow on our Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, Truth in the Turn.
Hey, Noah.
Hey, what's up?
Not much. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. How about you guys?
I'm doing well.
Doing well, too.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining our podcast today. Can you just describe a little bit about who you are and what initially made you get into NASCAR?
Yeah, so my name is Noah Lewis, as you guys already said. But I got into racing as when I was about, I want to say 12 or 11. And basically the story goes that I had no interest in racing whatsoever. And I thought that it was just cars going in circles like everybody else that has no interest in racing. But then I had a neighbor that was a race fan and asked me, who's your favorite race car driver? And I said, I don't know. I guess Jeff Gordon. I don't know any race car drivers. And that was the only name that came to mind. And he was like, no, you're going to be a Dale Earnhardt Jr. fan. And I was like, okay, great. I don't know who that is. And I was kind of thinking, like, picturing like this old guy. I don't know. It's funny, now knowing Dale, like, who he really is. But anyway, that friend of mine, I grew up on the eastern shore of Virginia, on coastal Virginia. So we were close to Dover, Delaware. And he was like, I'm going to take you to a race. We go to Dover every year. And so I ended up going to a racetrack with him, and I was hooked, man. Immediately. Like I tried to watch a race the week before going to the racetrack, and I fell asleep. And I was like, "This isn't for me. Like, I'll go have fun. Like, it's fun to go to a sporting event, but it's not going to be anything I'm interested in." And then I went to the racetrack, and I was like, "Never mind." I loved the sounds. I loved the sights, the smells. It was my first professional sporting event. So like walking up the grandstands and like seeing down into the racetrack, and then the engines firing up. You never realize how loud it is until you're there. When I say like the smells, it sounds like a random thing to say, but like just the tire rubber and the racing fuel and like all the smells of racing that you get, it's just all of it combined. I was like, I left the track knowing that day that, one, I was a fan of racing now and I was going to follow it, but two, like immediately I had this idea that it was something that I wanted to pursue and be a part of in some way. I thought I'd be a race car driver at first. I was like, yeah, that's totally going to be it. I'm going to be a race car driver. This is great. But that once I realized that didn't work out, I kind of relied on some other strengths of being nosy, talking a lot, and liking to write. And so then somebody was like, well, that sounds like a journalist to me. You got to have all those qualities. So that's kind of the direction I started to go into.
Yeah, so you sort of mentioned there you like to write. Can you explain your journey of how you became a media member, credentialed?
Yeah, that's a funny story. I was basically an annoying teenager who did not like hearing no's, and really enjoyed just reaching out to people and getting advice and getting guidance and having phone calls and email chains with just what can I do? How do I accomplish this? Because like I said, I mean, when I realized racing was what I wanted to do, I knew it. I was just like, yeah, this is it. This is what I want to be in. And so when I realized journalism was the path I was going to take, I just started DMing people on Twitter. I tell kids all the time, I tell people that have reached out to me for guidance similarly, that we live in a world that's so connected now, and you can DM anybody pretty much. And so I reached out to journalists, I reached out to reporters, people on TV, people on radio in NASCAR, and you'd be surprised how many people actually responded and wanted to talk. And so eventually I kind of Google searched. I started actually an Instagram page originally that did pretty well. And then when I wanted to move into professional writing, I was 15 and I Google searched websites looking for a NASCAR rider, and this site called TSJ Sports popped up, and I emailed the guy and I said, hi, I'm a 15-year-old with really poor grammar, but I just want to learn. Like, can you pair me with somebody to learn? And the guy was like, yeah, no, we don't do that. And so then I sent another email and was like, thank you for, responding, but also, can you please consider this, and And he got back to me and was like, okay, fine, we'll see what that's like, but you won't be able to publish for a while. And then 2 months later, I was publishing, which was not expected at all. And so from there, just continuing to reach out to people. NASCAR is trying to gauge a younger audience, and they've been doing that for a number of years. And so they kind of got connected with me through a few other people. And so I got on phone calls with NASCAR themselves, representatives from NASCAR, and they were giving me some advice and guidance. And then when I was 17, I reached out to NASCAR and said, I know that you've always told me I have to be 18, but is there any way that I could do this before turning 18 in person with the pros, at the racetrack? And of course, again, they said no, but again, I didn't like that answer. So I continued to push and ask and see if there were other avenues that could be looked at. And eventually, somehow it all came together at Richmond Raceway. And I was only 17 years old. It was my parents had to sign a bunch of paperwork to say if I got hit by a race car that they would not sue everybody, and so and it was very kind of quiet. Like, it was kept under the radar. Like, you're going to be coming in as a 17-year-old. We don't want that advertised like out to everybody because we want you to fit in. We want to see if it's possible for a 17-year-old to come in and fit in and play the part and do the role well. And so in this business, you always hear you won't start in the pros. And while that's so true for many, I had this really weird experience of jumping straight into, talking to Jimmy Johnson and Dale Earnhardt Jr. On a given weekend. And it was all because of my consistency, staying consistent with what I was doing, but also reaching out and using every asset that I had to, I had zero connections to the industry, but when you start reaching out to people, you're establishing those connections, and that's really what it took. And so to be one of the youngest to ever, be in the media center doing that is something that will always be such a cool thing for me.
Yeah, well, that's such an amazing story. Amazing to hear, especially from people who want to get into writing or professional journalism. So that makes me go into my next question. What do you think NASCAR can do, or media in particular, to have fans who quit watching the sport?
Yeah, I think that it's always important. NASCAR is at a place right now where there is so much of that. We were at our peak 15, 20 years ago, and now it's kind of been this. Now we're at a steadier trajectory, but before that, it was kind of just this fall off. And so there is that where we need to bring fans back, and I think that they're starting to do some good things with bringing certain racetracks back, bringing areas back into the market. Rockingham's coming back this upcoming weekend, and we brought back North Wilkesboro. We've raced at Bowman Gray. We're doing things that kind of lend to what the fans that went away were complaining about. But there's still a lot of work to be done. I think that if NASCAR continues to lean into their social presence and things like that in this day and age, that we also can make some new fans, more new fans, which, you want to get those old fans back, but eventually those older fans are going to phase out anyway, naturally, right? And so you got to get the younger fans in to regenerate that. But I think that listening is important, listening to the fans and acknowledging what their desires are, being willing to test things, to do things. Whether that be just increasing horsepower because everybody's yelling increase horsepower on the race cars, right? Like these types of things that we've seen NASCAR make progress in, starting to try more so. We still aren't to the level of like where we need to be with trying things when fans are calling for it, but we're getting there. We have a lot of people that are talking higher up and at the top about, okay, well, this is what everyone's saying. Maybe we should think about this. So I think that, continuing to listen to those people is very important.
Yeah, okay. And my next question is, what do you think is the most common misconception about NASCAR?
Common misconception, man. I guess the most common misconception is just that it's a bunch of cars going in circles. And it's funny because I just told you, I used to have the same misconception. Like, I was like, what does this take? I mean, it's a guy, they're sitting in the race car, they're just driving, I can do that. I do that on the interstate every weekend, getting to these racetracks, right? But that's not everything that they're doing. There is a lot going on in that race car. There is, you're in sometimes 135, 40-degree heat for 3.5, 4 hours at a time. And the mental piece of that is so tremendous. I mean, sometimes these drivers can lose 10 pounds in water weight in a given race. And there's physical, there's mental. They do a lot of training now on that side of things. And I mean, it takes a lot. There's a bunch of G's pressed at you for an extended period of time, and your reflexes have to be all there. There's a lot of skill that goes into it, and I think even just more so than the driver, the competition piece of it with the pit crews and how well they train and how much that can make a difference. The mechanics and everybody working on the car, how they can adjust it, what difference that makes. There's a lot more competition to it than I think people realize when they think that, okay, they're just getting in the car and they're turning and turning and turning and turning. When you peel back those layers, you start to realize, wow, there's a lot of things at play here, and it's not just a random guy saying, yeah, I feel bored, so I'm going to go get in the car and turn left. So I think that's probably the biggest one.
And going off a little bit about the misconceptions, how do you think like the regular person that maybe doesn't watch NASCAR views NASCAR?
That's a good question. I think that that's kind of how they view it, but I think that if I could give them any, to kind of twist your question a little bit, if I could give that person any advice, I would say, go watch a race, go to a race, whatever it is, and pick somebody to root for. You have to, no matter what reason, right? I used to tell people when Kyle Busch drove the M&M's car, it might be that you just like M&M's, and you're like, yep, that's my guy, right? It might be, oh yeah, I use Progressive Insurance, and now I'm rooting for Denny Hamlin. Whatever it is, I don't care. But pick somebody to root for when you go into it for the first time as a new fan, because if you don't, then you are just going to see a lot of cars driving around because you don't watch any other thing like that, right? When you watch a football game, you have a rooting interest. You have somebody that you're favoring. If not, you just see a bunch of guys running up and down the field, slamming into each other and throwing a ball through the air, right? Soccer, the same deal. Like if you don't like somebody, if there's not a team you care for, there's just a bunch of guys kicking a ball up and down the field. Great. What's the enjoyment in that, right? So I'd say for sure, it's just, you got to go into it and pick somebody to root for some reason so that you can dedicate yourself. That's what I had to do that very first race. My reason was my friend told me you're going to root for Dale Earnhardt Jr. And I was like, all right, fine. I think he's the guy in the Allstate car. And he's like, no, in the Nationwide car, right? I'm like, oh, okay. So once I did, and I followed him that whole entire race, I was like, wow, like, come on, like, go. It changed the whole mindset. It wasn't just cars driving around. It was like my focus on who I wanted to win, and either being mad that they were doing bad or being happy that they were doing good. And that's what kind of sports is you got to have that mad or happy to stay attached to it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And focusing a little bit on your own personal standpoint, what post has been your most successful, like viewership wise, that you can remember?
Yeah, so I've had a couple of good ones on different platforms. On YouTube, my best one was a post that Kyle Busch was just going off about Brad Keselowski on. I mean, he was like really laying in on what he was doing. And what was funny about that post is that Brad was standing probably just a few feet away, and Kyle's like talking crap about him, and he's like, I should go over there and beat his tail right now, and blah blah. I mean, and it was just like the craziest thing in that video. A few seasons ago now, it did almost 1 million views or something like that, and so then there, on Twitter or X, it's sometimes easier to spread views as well. And I'd say for that one, it was when Josh Williams decided to park his race car because he was mad at NASCAR right on the start finish line and get out. And actually, I was standing there on pit road with a few people who had just asked me about how do you capture all these crazy moments? How do you find, how does this stuff happen? How do you find yourself in the right place? And I was like, listen, it's truly just right place, right time. There's a little bit of like making sure you're in the right area because something's coming, but it's a little bit of right place, right time as well. And then literally that took place, and I turned around and looked at the two people I was standing with, and I was like right now, like literally right now is one of those moments. And I pull my phone up and I'm recording and interviewing Josh, and that was a crazy moment as well. So two pretty captivating moments that went past the realm of just the fan base and were seen by people all over like, wow, what the heck is going on here? And there were fun moments to capture.
Yeah, definitely sounds like you've had some very exciting moments on pit road and the racetrack. I'm also curious about like celebrities that you've seen. If you have any like stories with celebrities at the racetrack.
Yeah, there certainly have been a few celebrities to come through. I think one of the coolest, I'll always say this, one of the coolest celebrities that I've ever met at the racetrack is Pitbull, and he was a team co-owner for a few seasons, and just a really, really cool guy. I remember asking him a question about being a celebrity in racing, and he was like, "I'm gonna stop you right there." He's like, "I'm not a celebrity. I'm a hardworking person." He's like, "There's a difference, right?" And truly, the guy cares for everybody. Like I also watched him. I was walking with him when he got out of his car at Daytona for the Daytona 500 a few years back. And the walk from where they dropped him off to the hauler in the garage is no more than 2 minutes of a walk, right? But that walk took him probably 25 minutes because he signed and took pictures with and talked to and shook hands and chatted with and stopped. And I mean, just with every single person that wanted to talk to him. And it just shows kind of who he is. He's not one of those like, I'm going to have my posse around me and I'm going to, bolt through kind of guys. He is a very authentic, like wanting to chat with people, like letting the old ladies that were around come and kiss him on the cheek. And like, I mean, just like all the crazy stuff. So he was very, very cool. I'd say meeting The Rock was very cool. Dwayne Johnson. This year, the new Captain America was there, Anthony Mackie, and that was really, really cool. Walking pit road with him when he got to experience that. So there's been one really cool one too is Jay Leno was at a racetrack one time and we interviewed him, and I really wanted a picture with Jay Leno for some reason because it's Jay Leno, right? So we interviewed him in the media center. And afterward, about an hour later, I was walking and Jay Leno was coming back through the garage. I was like, oh, this is the perfect opportunity just to say, hey, great interviewing you. Do you mind if I grab a picture with you? So I'm walking up and he's got this big bodyguard around him. And I said, hey, Jay, I was wondering. And the bodyguard like turns and looks at me with like this mean face, like back up. And Jay Leno goes, hey, don't worry about it. I know this guy, right? And just from like the interviews that we did prior. And I was like, oh, thank God, Jay Leno got that guy to not beat me up. But yeah, certainly really, really cool scenarios. The very coolest was meeting Emmitt Smith and interviewing Emmitt Smith because I'm a diehard Cowboys fan. But I'll save that story.
Well, thank you for sharing your insight and experience in NASCAR with our podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was fun being on. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Alrighty.
Well, that was a great conversation we just had with Noah. Austin, there were so many stories he just told us. Which one was your favorite?
Well, for me, I'm a little biased because I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, unfortunately. Emmitt Smith, that's pretty cool that he got to meet Emmitt Smith, and he was like, tell him to hold the drink. If you hold my drink, take a picture. So I thought that was pretty funny, It's pretty cool that he's got all those experiences at the track, and, he's obviously went viral, had over 1 million views on that Kyle Busch video and probably a couple others. So I'm curious about you, Zach. Which one do you think was the most interesting?
My favorite story was when we found out how he got into the media scene. His passion for the sport, I mean, you could tell throughout the whole interview that he never gave up and he always chased his dreams to get to where he was. And I guess he has the title of youngest writer in the media center because you have to be 18 years old to be a credentialed media member, and he was in there at 17. So I thought that was pretty cool. I also thought it was cool how he was able to tell stories about meeting Pitbull and the way Pitbull interacted with fans. Stopping to see every single one of them that wanted a picture or autograph. Having celebrities like that in the sport is very important to bring fans back, because who knows, if you were a fan of Pitbull and you weren't a fan of NASCAR, maybe Pitbull could have transitioned some of those people into NASCAR fans.
Yeah, with celebrities, when you see them be a normal average person you see on the street and they act like that, it's pretty cool because they're special people. They've made themselves popular, and to not have an ego and be open to seeing fans and getting autographs and stuff, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, those celebrity interactions were definitely cool to learn about. Did anything else from our conversation with Noah stick out to you?
I think his story to the sport, how he wasn't really a fan. He said he even fell asleep at the first race. I
Yeah.
thought that was pretty funny, and he had to be told by one of his friends like to follow Dale Earnhardt. Like, I feel like most fans usually enjoy it from their first time, but I don't think he did. But now here he is now, hardworking guy working in NASCAR. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and also he mentions that back when you're initially a fan watching your first race or something, you pay attention to the sponsors, and usually if you're a kid, you'll like Kyle Busch because he was sponsored by M&M's back in the day. So I think sponsorship was also a very key point to bringing new fans to NASCAR.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for tuning in once again on Truth in the Turn. Make sure you guys give us a follow on all of our socials, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and we'll see you on the next one.
See ya.